So I want to welcome everybody out to our March Family Search gig meeting. How many of you got to attend Roots Tech or watch some of the talks virtually? Great. Anybody have a favorite one so far? I know there's a couple hundred of them. You probably haven't watched all of them yet. Any favorites? No, they were all just good. Well, I was out there for a couple days for Roots Tech, and I got to attend 3 talks in 3 days. So wasn't able to attend very many talks, but I was able to talk to a lot of people. So if you followed my blog posts, I posted the blog address just a little bit ago on the chat, but I'll post it again for those who have come in a little late. You'll see some of the things that I was involved with at Roots Tech. And now I'm trying to get ready to start some of those classes. But because of Roots Tech, my wife and I decided to further our education. And so we're taking a four-year technical degree in genealogy. So supposedly we have 40 classes we have to take. And my wife was working on she's working on England and DNA specialties, and I'm working on American and German specialties. So that's all I need to do, right? Is add one more thing to my list of things to do. So, but one of the talks at Roots Tech is always what's new at Roots Tech, and it's usually given by Ron Tanner. And this year, Ron Tanner wasn't available. He had a little medical issue going on, and so they had to have a guest host for that talk, who was Ron's boss, Craig, and I can't remember Craig's last name right offhand. So he presented the talk on what's new at Roots Tech. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today, is what's new at Roots Tech, or what's new at Roots Tech. One of the MCs, he joked about it because it's not Roots Tech, it's Root Stek. And he would always call it Root Stek every time he'd be talking about it. So we will go through Family Search. Some of the stuff we've already talked about over the last couple meetings, but talk about what's new in Family Search, and then open up some questions at the end. You can always go to rootstech.org and go into the on-demand presentations and just type in Family Search, and you'll see a lot of different presentations on Family Search, including the what's new on Family Search. So you might be able to learn some stuff that I haven't seen yet for our next meeting. But I am going to share my page. And now remember what I talked about over the last couple of weeks or couple months. There's this part here that says try new home features. And when you turn that on, you may get to try the new designs. And so Family Search has been releasing new designs as they are implemented. So they start to design things and they think it works, and they will turn on that new home page feature or new page feature. And sometimes a dozen people will get to try it. Sometimes 100 people will get to try it, and sometimes more. So it all depends on where they are in the stages of development. But if you are working in any of these new homepage features, they do request that you provide your feedback. There's a little button over here on the left-hand side that says feedback. And when you click on it, hopefully this pulls up, you get to provide a little bit of feedback, about the page. And they were talking about what kind of feedback they get. They want constructive feedback. They don't want that feedback says, I liked what you had before, get rid of this new stuff. That's not helpful. But we do see a lot of that in the blog or in the Facebook and in social media. A lot of that discussion goes on all the time about, I can't believe they changed my favorite way of looking at this. Now I don't know what I'm doing. But they were talking about in that what's new at FamilySearch, some of the things that they receive. And what they're saying is some of the things are very well thought out. Sometimes people will mock up a page and just redesign a page for them and show them how they would like to see it. So they do take all of that information and they bring it to their site developers and engineers and try to see what they can implement out of all of that. There's a couple new things that just happened this week on FamilySearch. And one of them is a new data set. So I'm going to click on one of my recommended tasks here. And you can see that there is a new set of hints. And there's this new hint for the United States Social Security numerical identification files. So if you have anyone in the last probably 2 generations or so that may have had Social Security, or they were the parents of someone who had Social Security, you will now see this new hint popping up in your tree. And this, I'll show you what this looks like in the review. This is similar to the Social Security application files that you see in Ancestry. It gives you the person's name, the different names that they went by, and when they filed that information. So you can see here that Wilma Marie Kofelt, previous names, Wilma Marie Kofelt when she applied in June 1948, Wilma Marie Parrish in October of 1953, Wilma Marie Daniels in September of 1955, and then in February of 1996, and death in August of 2002. So notice what this helps you with. It helps you with name changes. It allows you to track somebody as they get married, get divorced, or have a change of name, and they have to refile that information in their Social Security. Gives you their aliases. It gives you the previous residence, the death date. Unlike the Social Security Death Index, it actually gives you the day, month, and year. Social Security Death Index only gives you the month and year of the death. It gives you the birth date, the birthplace, and it gives you the parents' names. So this is really good in that it provides a lot of helpful information. And, as you add this, you're going to attach it to your family tree. And remember how to do this. When you're comparing it, you look at the information, make sure there's nothing new over here. You hit attach. This is for Lewis, the father. Again, nothing new over on the left-hand side. You're going to attach it. And then for Wilma. Now notice I have Wilma M. Kofelt. This is Wilma Marie. So I'm going to copy that middle name. Notice also I have a good birth date and birth location, which I didn't have in her record. And I also have her as living. So I did not have a death record for her. So now I can add this death record. I can add her residence. And I can add when she applied for Social Security to the file. I'm going to hit attach. Now I've got that new information. So I'm going to go to her page. And I'm going to add that information to her. Add her middle name. I'm going to change the birth. So it's 16 Feb 1934. I select the standardized terminology. It's Dayton, Ohio. I select a standardized location. You can see the information here, so I can compare it, make sure that I've copied it correctly. I'm going to hit save. And then I want to go down and make sure, you see, I have these other living people. And so I'll need to go back through and look to see if I have Social Security information for any of these other living children. The easy way to do that is to see if any of the parents are listed with other Social Security. And so you can see there's multiple other ones here. And this one is going to be for Richard. So I'm going to review that one. Again, the parents don't have any new information, so I just attach the parents, compare, attach. Richard, so I had 1936, this has 1934. I now have a death date. Again, I'm going to select the standardized, add the location, add the Social Security application, hit attach. And I'm going to go over to Richard's page, and I'm going to update those bits of information that we just added with his middle name, Leon. His birth information, 31 May 1934. Dayton, whoops. Dayton, Ohio. Okay, we just added him. We're going to go back to Irma again, or Ida, and we're going to add that last child. So attach Lewis, attach Eugene. We have his death date. We have a new middle name, and we have his birth information. So we'll go back and correct that. Okay. Fix the date. 1944. Again, Dayton. And now you see we have some other things in here that we can add later. Okay. So the great thing about this is if you have a large number of living people still in your tree that you haven't had time to go back through and check on their deaths, this Social Security number index will help you find those individuals and add their death dates to the records. So are there any questions about that new record set? I've found it really useful. I've been spending a lot of time just killing off people on my tree. So okay. So I'm going to go back. Another thing that's been really helpful here is that when you have a hint, it also gives you similar records. And so you can see that there's more similar records here on the right-hand side that you can use. And then there's some records here that are already attached. So you could, go back to this record and add these other records in and continue to do that as you build out your tree and source the information that you've found. Okay. So I'm going to go back to the main page again. Now, FamilySearch is continuing to grow. It's continuing to add more and more information all the time. And the latest statistics say that there are 1.47 billion people in the tree. So there's almost 1.5 billion people in the tree that's on FamilySearch. So even if you're brand new to FamilySearch, you're likely going to find people in your family within a couple generations that you can attach to. There are 12 million new people added each month. Okay, so that's a lot. I mean, that's almost the population of Florida being added to FamilySearch every month. And of those 1.5 billion people that are in FamilySearch, 2.6 billion sources are attached to them. So, you're looking at, about 1.5 to 2 sources per person, but some people have a lot more sources than others. If I go in and look at Ida, I can look at her information and I can see that she has 10 sources attached to her and 1 memory. So those, the more sources you have, the more substantial the information you have for that person, and the better you're able to document her information. There are 44 million new sources added each month. So as I mentioned, there's 12 million people added each month and 44 million new sources. So there's, people are adding sources, they're linking records to the people that are in the family tree. Now, one of the things that you may have noticed as you go in and put information, and we'll go in and open Ida up one more time here. If I go into edit, at the top, it asks me for what language I'm working in. Now, this has been here for a little while, but a lot of people probably haven't noticed that. Notice all of the languages that you can input information to, and I'll select English. But I could select any of these languages. If I select Chinese, I can type it in Chinese. If I select Czech, Danish, Japanese, whatever it might be, I can utilize all those languages. Now, FamilySearch has added 7 new languages last year, and they're planning on adding 7 new languages this year. So that means what they're doing is eventually you'll be able to write these in Arabic and Jewish and Cyrillic and, different alphabets. And so people in those countries can then write in their native alphabet. The other thing up top, it says the 5 past contributors. So that means 5 people have contributed to this information in the name. And if I'm interested in it, I can see all of the changes. So I can see who has added information when I click on that. So you can see FamilySearch started out, and then I've made changes. And then the other people who have made changes to other parts of this person's tree, or of this person's page here. It looks like I'm doing most of it though. There's Wendy Van Buren, there's Richard Madden, myself, FamilySearch. So those are the ones that are adding information. Another thing that's been added recently, if you go down here to the tools, you can go to print options, and you've all probably seen this, the pedigree, portrait pedigree, the fan chart, family group sheets, and group sheet with records. But now we have this person detail, which is brand new to the print options. And so if I click on the person detail, let it load up here, I can tell it what I want. Do I want vitals, other information, spouse and children, parents and children, or siblings? So I can turn off things. I can just do the vitals. I can add the other information, which happens to be the residence. I can add their spouse and their children and their parents and children. And now when I print this, this is what I will get in my printout. I will get a family of information about that individual that I can then bring wherever I want to and use that as my, research help when I'm doing research someplace. Maybe I'm going to a library and I just want to print 4 or 5 people, their pages out, so I don't have to go on the computer all the time and see what I know already. And so I can use that information and carry that along in my folder. when I go back and look at a person's tree, so I can view Ida's tree here. And so I see Ida here. I'm doing a fan chart, so I can see Ida and then all of her ancestors back to 7 generations. I've got it set to 7 generations currently. And this is the research helps color pattern. The blues are where I have hints. The purples are where there's some suggestions of things that need to be researched. And then the reds are data problems. Well, let's just take a look at Lewis real quick here and see what the data problem is. Missing a standardized birthplace. This is something that's really simple to fix. I just edit and I put my mouse after the information, Broken Arrow, Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I also can change this birth date, 20 May 1901. And the reason why it's correct is I got that information from the Find a Grave record here, and now I've saved it, and that error message disappears. Most of the time when you see that error message, that red block, it means that the place has not been standardized or the date has not been standardized. Occasionally, it will mean that the children or the individual was born, at the wrong time. So, you can't have a parent that was born in 1898 and a child born in 1901. Or you can't have a parent that died in 1967 and a child born in 1970. So that's what that red color will mean in most cases. But you saw the tree, how many generations I had on that person. The largest connected tree, as I mentioned, there's 1.5 billion people in FamilySearch. The largest connected tree is 737 million people connected in one tree. Okay. So for me, I don't have near that many people connected in my tree. I know that for a fact because I'm related to nobody. I was related to 264 people at RootsTech. My wife was related to 56,000 people at RootsTech. Okay. So I don't have a whole lot of people in my tree, probably only about 40 or 50,000 people. Another interesting statistic in FamilySearch is that there are now 83 million memories. And let's go back. We'll just go back to Ida again. When you look at the memories, you can see I only have one memory for her. Okay. And what is that memory? It's my grandmother's obituary lists her as a relative. But let me go back and pull up another individual in my family. And if I go in here and I go to, oh, yeah, it doesn't have it in there. Okay. I'm going to go to my great-grandfather, Raymond Bernard Westerheide. And you'll see how many memories he has. He's got 57. Okay. Now, notice at the top of these memories, I have dates. Okay. So those dates indicate when this record was published or when it occurred, when the event occurred, or the picture was taken, or something of that sort. And then I have titles for everything. So I'm just going to go in. I'll show you where you input that in the memory. So you've got your memory, you've got your title. You can tag it. You can put whatever the topic tags you want to put in here. You have the date. So you can edit the date and put a date. You notice this is August 17th, 1940 was the date of the newspaper article. And the location was Minster, Ohio. It says Minster right there. So I can put that in there. I put the description in as to what newspaper, the date, and the page number. You can also create albums and stories. And then the file name is right there. You can also record a memory. You can, add an audio component to this, or you can write a note about it. So if you put these dates and places in there, then when you go back to your memories, you can sort your memories by dates and places. So this is something that's fairly new. We have this filter right here. And so if I click on the filter, I can filter it by photos, by stories, by documents, by audio. The newest added, chronological, the title, private or public. So this is really good because if all I wanted to see are the photographs, I can turn off the documents, stories, and audios. And now I just see the photographs for him. And I can see which one did I add most recently. So now this is the last one I added, and then this is the first one I added. But, that's not really helpful. What I want to see is in chronological order. Now I have these that don't have dates on them because I don't know when these pictures were taken. Well, this one I should know because this was his wedding picture. So I should put in, I believe this is April 17th, 1917. So I'll fix that later. You can see somebody put a comment on this photograph here. Now, might as well see what that comment is while we're here. So, okay, so they just put the title of the photograph in the comments. So, they could come up here and add that title up above. I always try to identify everybody that's in a photo or in a document so that I can, link it to everybody that's there. Okay. So, having this information in there is very helpful so that I can go back and see chronologically when things happened. I can see in 1938 how many times my great-grandfather was arrested for alcohol, transporting alcohol, and so on and so forth. I can see their 50th wedding anniversary. It's down here in 1967, his 80th birthday, and then the death notices and so on. So it helps to organize your information this way. So as I mentioned, there's 83 million memories that are now attached. People's own collections are being attached to FamilySearch to provide documentation about people. Now, when you look at the records, a couple of weeks ago, I showed the search images area. And remember that this is where all of the images are being put now. So when we go into search images, they changed the page again. There we go. So you can see there are 5 billion images now in FamilySearch. And see how quickly they're increasing. Well, on those 5 billion images, and this is what's interesting. When they gave this talk at Roots Tech, they said there were 4.6 billion images. Okay, so that was earlier this month. So there are now over 5 billion images. So you see how quickly this is changing. On those 5 billion images, there are almost 9 billion searchable names. Okay, so, like a census record will have 50 names on it. A marriage record might have 6 names on it. So, when you think about all those images and how many names are on that, there were 1 billion new images added in 2022, and they expect to have more than 1 billion images added again this year in FamilySearch. So it's growing very quickly. Now, a new feature that we have here, you see the details, sources, collaborate, timeline. This timeline used to be over here. And the timeline shows you all of the things that are attached to the person in chronological order. So their birth, their children's birth, spouses' births, deaths, marriages, locations that they lived are all listed here for the whole family. I have the map here. You can see that it says 38. Well, as I zoom in on this, you see they're all in Ohio. So everything that happened with this family is in Ohio. When I zoom in on it, you'll start to see, now we see some in Dayton, some in, Minster, different locations. You can see death notices, residences, births. If I click on something, you can see all of the things that happen in this location. If I click out over here, so there's a little bit of difference. There's Minster. These are both Minster, but the way that they're listed in here, one is associated with the church parish, one is associated with the town, one is associated with the suburb. So you might find some things that are slightly off. This is the cemetery here. You can see it'll pull up that piece of information. We have a little one here, and let's see. So that one goes to the christening. So the little water drop goes to a christening, and you can see the information associated with that. So every time you click on one of these items, it goes to the item in your timeline that it's associated with. The other thing is it won't work here, but you can show the route. Since these are basically the same location, the route doesn't move a whole lot. But you can see it's still moving. So it's connecting everything in chronological order. So if you have an ancestor who immigrated from England to Massachusetts, and then went to Pennsylvania, and then went to Kansas, you would see that track route across the country. Okay, and I can get rid of that. Now, the new piece here is the About page. Has anybody tried the About page yet? So when you click on this, I get a short biography where I can hit more and I can see more. This biography is based on the records and information that's included in the person's personal page. You can see the list of photographs. You can see the timeline. You can see the sources. And I'll go back over here. So you can see the sources that are attached. Whoops. Sources got moved over here now. You see the spouse and children. You see the parents and siblings. And then you see the name meaning. So you can see what Raymond means, what Bernard means. So you can see the information about the person. So this is a really interesting page, just so you can see the information about the person that you're looking at. And it's more, it might be more interesting to look at than this page here. So you can't go in and delete or edit any of this, but it links you to the information that you're looking at on the website. So I want to show you another project. Oops. So y'all remember the 1950 census going online. FamilySearch had 200,000 people assisting to index this. And a lot of that indexing had been done by computers, and the people doing the indexing were actually reviewing what the computer had interpreted from the record. And it only took a couple of weeks to get the 1950 census online compared to the 1940 census, which took about 6 months. Well, here in this FamilySearch.org/1950 census, you can put in one of your family members. And I'm just going to put Westerheide in there and just see what pops up. I'm going to get a bunch of them. And so I'm going to select one of them. Well, let's see. It worked last night. Huh. Okay, maybe it doesn't want Western Heidi. I don't know. Maybe it's broken. But what that would do in there, let's see. We're just going to try it with my great grandfather's name specifically and see if we can get it. Okay, so let's try it. Okay, so we can view this full page now. There we go. And so what you see here is the information. So you see the name meaning, you see all of the people in the family that are listed in the census, you see the location for the census, and then you see information. So it says he was married, and it shows you in the census, it says married. He was a proprietor of a dry cleaner, and it says, proprietor dry cleaner in the census. He was 54 years old. And what it's doing is taking little bits and pieces of the census and providing a bit of a story associated with it. So, here he lived through the flu pandemic. In 1950, he was 54 years old. This means he was 22 years old in 1918 when the Spanish flu pandemic broke out. He lived through the Great Depression. He was 33 years old in 1929 during the Great Depression. He was, 45 years old during World War II. So it's coming up and building what you can then utilize as a little bit of a story. You can copy this information and provide a bit of a story for him. And you can find out more about this by clicking the Find Out button. And so now I get more information about the Great Depression. I get some unemployment rates. I get pictures and, descriptions, pop culture items. If I go to the flu pandemic, I get information about the flu pandemic, some stuff about the hospitals and what was going on, the infection rates. 28% of the population became infected. Between 500,000 and 850,000 died. So this is a good way to understand your ancestor in context with the things that happened in their life during that 1950 census. And then I can say I'm related to him. I can click on this. And now I can share this information or I can save it. I can visit his page. I can add more relatives. I can, find someone else. I can invite others to discover this and so on. So, if I went to share it, I can do Facebook, Messenger, Twitter, email, copy the link, so that I could share this on my social media with my other relatives so they could come in and discover that story about my ancestor. One of the other things we talked about previously was in the genealogies, so search genealogies section. And we talked about the oral histories right here, the oral genealogies. So just to give you an idea, this is one area where they're, especially focusing on Africa and the Pacific Islands. They've been focusing in on 18 countries in Africa, and they've done 1 million interviews. This means that they're going out to those communities and talking to these individuals. So they've talked to 1 million people. And that has allowed them to reconstruct trees to include 189 million people. So when they talk to those people, they say, my father was so-and-so, my grandfather was so-and-so, my great-grandfather was so-and-so. And all of the information is being recorded from those oral histories. And now it's almost 200 million people in those trees. The other one we talked about previously was computer-generated trees. And these computer-generated trees are taking the information that's in the records, and the computer AI is saying these people are listed as parents, children in census, so this is a family. These people are listed as the child and the parents in a marriage record or a birth record. And so it takes that information and it finds the matches and it builds the tree associated with that. Now they're looking at specific communities around the world. So in each, like Australia, Mexico, the Philippines, Brazil, and Italy, they've got certain little towns that they're building these computer generated trees around those towns and testing that process. So this will be something that's going to be coming out, more and more as AI gets better and better at analyzing our family histories. I mentioned that there were hints, 2.6 billion sources attached to the tree already. And right now there are 530 million new hints still sitting. Actually, there were 530 million new hints added in 2022. There are now 2.5 billion hints sitting there waiting for people to attach those records to people. We saw, as we started out, I attached 3 or 4 hints to various people. So there are 2.5 billion hints waiting to be attached to people right now. 10% of those hints, so that's 250 million hints, will add a new person to the family tree. So, just think about that. You're adding a census record or a birth record, and it's somebody that's not already in the tree, but you can utilize those hints to add them in there. Another thing that's that you see now, and I'm just going to go to his page. There we go, my great-grandfather's page. And when we scroll down, I'm going to go to his details. We scroll down and you see this other information where we can add names and places and so on. We also have this other relationships. Okay, and I probably mentioned this earlier, but again, it's a new feature. If we add a relationship, let's say that he was an employer. I can hit employment. He's an employer. I can add his employees as a relationship. I can add, if he was a godparent on a list, I can add his godchild. So, if you're going through and you find a baptismal list and it says this person is the witness or the godparent, you can now add them to to the individual, and eventually you can figure out where they belong in the tree. So this is a really great way of linking people to their friends, associates, and neighbors. There's your neighbor right there. He lived next to this person in the 1950 census. So I'm going to put the neighbor here, and I'm going to link my great-grandfather to his neighbors. And we can see, did they live by the same people in 1950 as they did in 1940 or 1930? Did the neighbors change based on the census records? So another way of looking at your family's relationships. One other thing that's coming up, and this is something that you may or may not have a need for, but if I go to tree, there's a fan chart, and there's also the first ancestor chart. If I click on the first ancestor chart, this is generally used in like Chinese or Japanese because they say, who was your first ancestor? You can then put in your first ancestor, and then it's going to connect you up or show you the connection. So I just did this to show something, and this is one of my ancestors from the 1770s. You can see all of their children. I can then select, the descendants of their children. So this is my line going from them to their children, to their grandchildren, off of that one to their great-grandchildren, off of this one to their great-great-grandchildren, off of this couple to their great-great-great-grandchildren, and then down to my siblings, the great-great-great-great-grandchildren. So I can show my direct lineage to this ancestor with all of the individuals within each generation and their spouses shown. And I can click on different individuals to see, how many children they have. So it's a new way of looking. The only problem is once you set this, it's permanent. This is your first ancestor. I haven't figured out a way to unset that yet. So, Yeah, I don't know how to unset it, but like I said, it works for Japanese and Chinese sort of family trees because they go from the first ancestor down. The other thing is that by the end of this year, they hope to be able to share living information within your closed group. So if you have all of your siblings and you're working on the same family, all of your siblings don't have to enter each other in the family tree. They'll be able to share the living individuals and see that information within your group. So you can set your group to be whoever you want it to be, and then share that information. So I am going to stop sharing there. I am sure I just gave you guys a whole bunch of new information. I'm hoping that you're going to go back into FamilySearch and try some of the new information. Maybe you took some notes. It will be on the video, so we are recording it. So you can always go back to that and find that video again. But had any of you tried any of those things that we talked about today? Michelle has? Which ones did you try, Michelle? Oh, she can't unmute. She's stuck in mute world. Let's see. Can I unmute? No. No. Okay. You were doing it as I did it. Okay. That's always a good way to do it, especially if you have a second monitor. You can sit there and follow the tasks and make sure you have it. Did you find anything useful today that might help in your research on FamilySearch, other than killing off all your recent ancestors with the new Social Security index?
Miles, I do have a question.
Yes.
I know everybody, that's not my tree on FamilySearch, my own tree, but on your memories,
Yes.
I know people can go in and add and finagle around with your family on family tree, but on your memories, you had one that had a comment,
Right.
but can anybody go in and change the information on your memories, or is it strictly you?
So I cannot go in and edit that person's title, the tags, any of that information. I can write a comment to that suggesting a change if I think something's wrong. I cannot change any of that, and I cannot disconnect that from that individual.
Okay, so that is basically, if you put it up there on an ancestor, that is yours.
Right.
Right.
Everybody can see it. They can search for it. It'll show up as a search under images, but they cannot modify something that you put in there.
Okay. Okay, good. I like that. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So any of those things, the oral histories, the stories, the documents, the images that you attach in memories are all owned, managed by you.
Yeah. You're proprietary, in other words.
Yeah, somebody can go in and say, hey, I want to add that photograph to my album, and they can do that.
Okay, they can ask, but do you have to give them permission?
No. So for example, if they're doing Westerheide research and they want to create an album on their under their profile for Westerheide,
right,
any image that they find, they can add to that album.
Okay.
And so that they just have to go to one place to find all of the Westerheide images. And when they click on those, they go back to the image that I have added, and they see what the information I have there. They can't modify it. It's just in their folder that they can make easier to find.
Okay. And they can't make any edits or anything like that. Okay. No. I got you. I like that. Yeah.
Any other questions? So I do get, every time before we have these meetings, I do get a couple emails saying, I don't have this in my calendar. So, I sent out the whole season of announcements. If you don't have it in your calendar, right now what I do is I modify individual events. So like today, you got a reminder about an hour beforehand, and it said, we're going to talk about new things on FamilySearch. I try to send those out. I get really busy at work, so sometimes I don't think about it until I happen to look at my email and I see somebody saying, hey, I don't have something in my calendar, so I'll make a change and I'll send it out fairly quickly. Remind me if you don't see it. We're going to keep these on the third Thursdays. Except for next month is April, and I am out of town for 2 weeks. I have a work trip to Panama City the second week in April, and a work trip to Coral Gables, the third week in April. So I think we're going to have to skip April. Yes, yeah, April. May and June should be okay if we want to go through that far. Okay. I'm assuming that we'll probably take off the summer. But that's up to everybody. It depends on what everybody else wants to do. And then when we come back, I will be out for 3 weeks in October, next fall, because I will be going to Germany, and Michelle's going to Switzerland at the same time period. So we're going to go hunt ancestors, not together, but in the same general part of Europe. So any other questions about Family Search stuff I showed today? If you guys have any topics you want to cover in Family Search, feel free to email those to me and we will try to address those in upcoming events. If you want to go back to the extreme basics of Family Search, we can do that. Right now, I'm assuming most people at least have an account in Family Search and have some names in there. And so I'm trying to show you all of the tools that you can use to help manage your information. Okay. Any last questions? I am going to stop recording.